Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dr. Serge, and welcome to another episode of Search for the Truth. And our goal is to empower people with knowledge in order to be able to reverse and help with health issues. And today we're going to talk about a very, very important topic with my following guest about surviving Alzheimer's disease. So let's get started. So, Mr. Peter, thank you for joining the show and welcome to the show.
And thank you for having me on, Dr. Serge. And greetings to everyone from New Zealand.
New Zealand, that's on the other side.
And we're a day ahead. It's
Awesome. So today we're going to talk about Alzheimer. Like I said, Alzheimer disease. I mean, I've been working with patients for a long time, and I've seen a lot of people dealing with dementia, Alzheimer. And I don't want to diminish the severity of other conditions, but Alzheimer's disease to me is one of the worst conditions because we see people losing their minds over time and they know it that they don't have their mind. So we're going to talk about it, and you're going to give us some hope today, what we need to do to prevent and reverse this condition. So first of all, can you tell us a bit about yourself? Why you have this passion and interest into this specific condition?
Dr. Serge, I have become an expert in Alzheimer's and project managing an Alzheimer's recovery very, very reluctantly. It was visited upon us, it was coming up around 2010, and my wife Anne, who she's a very, very accomplished person, great pianist, very, very intelligent, 140 plus IQ.
Wow.
And we had a new business, and she was administering the business, and she was starting to struggle with the administration, and she had this decline, a mysterious decline of unusual sort of symptoms like visual spatial problems. She struggled with sequencing paperwork, and there was all sorts of weird things going on. So one thing led to another. In 2012, she was diagnosed with early onset atypical, which is not a diagnosis that I can relate to. It's just a description.
Yeah.
Alzheimer's. And we were told, well, there's nothing can be done. And with early Alzheimer's, you'll have a gradual decline and then you'll tip over and things will go downhill very fast. Our attitude at the time, this is 2012, we said to the doctor, or we said to ourselves, actually, looked at each other and said, what do you mean nothing can be done? This is 2012. We had no idea that Alzheimer's is, in the mainstream medical profession, is regarded as untreatable. And our lives went on, and Anne gradually declined. And in 2017, she got really bad and went into full-time care. The same time, we'd been dealing with Dr. Bredeson's team, and we engaged Dr. Dave Jenkins, who's their local representative, in early 2017, and then started on a track that seemed to us to be a whole lot more credible, which was where they were looking at something that was very, very complex, and therefore they were very, very broad in their search for what was causing it. And so that's where we started. And the moment Anne got into the clutches of the mainstream Alzheimer's medical profession, she was in mortal danger. And so from that time on, things got very, very difficult. They were difficult earlier on, even going back to needing tests and things, and getting the cooperation of a GP. So I guess to sort of we've had a terrible, terrible journey. But my job has been as a project manager, once we've worked out what was wrong, which was about 3 months after Anne went into care, which was late 2017, we then were on the track of what was wrong with her. And strange enough, it's the basic problem was created by her immune system's ineffective response to mold inhalation. And from that time onwards, I've just project managed it, and that's my job. I do not have any expertise in Alzheimer's as such, but I have expertise in how we project manage the recovery. And Anne now, late 2017, was given 3 months to live, and that was a formal diagnosis for a life insurance payout. So she's 4 years past that, and I'm now just working on getting her home again. So I think she's probably statistically about 1 in 25 million at the moment. We think she's the first person to come back from end stage, and she was end stage. So that's, in a nutshell, that's our story.
Wow. So you have personal reasons to educate people and fight these conditions, because this is something I hear all the time from people. It's like, I got diagnosed with this condition, right? Alzheimer's disease. There's nothing I can do. Go home and just, slowly die. But that's not the case. So what is Alzheimer's disease at the end of the day? Can you break it down for us?
Okay. First thing, take the term disease out of it.
Okay.
Not a disease.
That's true.
When I refer to it now, I refer to it as Alzheimer's dementia, and dementia is a set of behaviours, and Alzheimer's is a set of symptoms, supposedly. But what we're actually looking at is this. It's almost like the best metaphor I've heard of for it is in the 19th century, people used to die of what they called, air quotes, the fever.
Yeah.
And we now know that the fever was actually any number of similar, it had any number of causes, and to their untutored eyes, it looked like one condition. And Alzheimer's is like that. It's actually just it's the symptoms that are left over after the brain's tried to protect itself from a number of assaults. Dr. Bredeson's team, they have identified 40 different causal factors so far. And the people they're treating in early stage Alzheimer's, their turnaround rate, so their recovery rate, and that's arrest and reversal of symptoms, is around 90%.
Wow.
Each person they're treating has a different combination of between 10 and 25 of the 40 possible causal factors.
Wow.
So Alzheimer's, as I say, the first thing, take disease out of it. It is a set of symptoms that have a bunch of causes, and each person will have a different set of causes.
So I know you said 40, but what are the top ones that we need to watch out when it comes to the major culprits of this condition?
That is very, very difficult. There probably isn't one. Certainly when you're starting a recovery program, one of the first things you need to do is deal with diet.
Yeah.
Diet is incredibly important, and if for no other reason, if you put aside the causal factors, it's almost universal that people with Alzheimer's have their brains are insulin resistant, and I believe the term was coined in about 2005, type 3 diabetes.
Yes.
So if you're looking for a good place to start, it's there. Clearly, lifestyle is a major factor. In Anne's case with early onset Alzheimer's, it appears from what I'm reading that a lot of the causal factors, the major causal factors, are environmental. And I come across people, and recently I came across someone who was suffering early onset Alzheimer's, who'd been a painter in our Air Force and who'd painted aeroplanes with highly volatile paints with no inhalation protection. But each person will basically have a different major cause. As I say, Anne's was mold inhalation, but it's and for some people there will be no one thing. It'll be a combination of factors, nothing standing out.
Yeah, I agree with you. Again, I mean, there's many factors causing different things in different bodies, different peoples. And you mentioned type 3 diabetes, right? I wanted to get your take on this because it seems that Alzheimer is really a sugar, a glucose, insulin, dysregulation issue. So what is the diet that you recommend? Are you for the keto diet, for example? It seems that a lot of people are for ketone production when it comes to health brains.
Yes, yeah. So Anne's diet is ketogenic, and that's in a rest home. That's reasonably difficult because, as you can imagine, they just seem to feed them. I mean, I go in there and their dessert of an afternoon for their evening meal is ice cream. So, yeah, diet is just incredibly important. And of course, as you're probably well aware, we're not only hearing that diet's very, very important, keto diet for Alzheimer's, but it's implicated in cancers. There's I just read a very good article from Dr. David Perlmutter on the link up between keto diet and improved cardiovascular health. And
Yeah.
we've actually done this for the last 20 years, and we came across it originally as the zone diet, and we took it up for sports performance,
Yeah.
and found running on fats, which is what keto diets basically do, run off body fat, is way more efficient.
It is, and most of our organs actually require ketones or fat as a source of fuel, right? You mentioned the heart. I was reading some statistics that about 40% of people with Alzheimer also had cardiovascular concerns as well. So there's a connection there. It's just not one condition, but there's maybe other things that are related, part of the whole system.
Well, certainly, statistically, if you're diabetic, your chances of exhibiting Alzheimer's symptoms double. And
Wow.
cardiovascular health, the whole works. I mean, Anne's unusual in that her base level of health is extremely good. She was riding thousands of kilometers a year at the time she contracted started to show symptoms. But for most people, when you see people with Alzheimer's, their whole state of health is not good.
Yeah. I mean, once in a while we hear on social media or different platforms like that it's possible to reverse Alzheimer, right? There's people making claim that coconut oil is one of the best food for brain health, right? So what's your take on coconut oil? Is that healthy for you? Is it part of the keto diet, for example?
Anne has actually, I'll go back a bit. The first time we got an inkling that there were things happening around the place that could reverse Alzheimer's, we read Mary Newport's book, Alzheimer's, What If There Was a Cure? And it's Dr. Mary Newport. And she illustrated quite comprehensively with her husband, Steve, who he started showing Alzheimer's symptoms in his early 50s. And she showed on the MOCA test, the Montreal, it's a cognitive assessment, which is commonly used with Alzheimer's people. And one of the tests is they just present a circle and say, draw a clock face and put the hands at 10 minutes past 5. And she showed early on his attempts at that, which was just a random series of the odd number and blobs all over the page, and 3 weeks of coconut oil. And he was actually drawing a reasonable facsimile of a clock face. So the coconut oil, as I understand it, and I correspond with Mary occasionally, it's I think an energy supply. It's certainly for Anne. As she was declining, she became delirious, and we now know, of course, her system was flooded with toxins because of the mold, her response to mold.
Yeah.
And if she started to become delirious and leave the planet, I would give her. I had a mixture of coconut oil and MCT oil, which is and there was 40% coconut oil, 60% MCT, and the MCT would give her a boost straight away, and the coconut oil would then give it the longevity. And even now, I mean, she has spasms, which she developed 7 or 8 years ago. She'd wake up in the morning and have spasms for an hour and a half, and just twitches, body twitches, and they completely went when we started treating with coconut oil. So yeah, I'm a fan of coconut oil. It's really important, but it is not the answer, but it is one of them.
It's one of the tools you can use, right? I mean, there's many options of that, like you said. I mean, there's 40 different factors, part of it. So there's many options you can do to help treating the condition. So you've made the claim in the past that the mainstream Alzheimer doctors are not quite competent. That's pretty bold. So what do you mean? Can you explain yourself?
Yeah. You softened that one out. They're incompetent. And the fact that all their patients die is that's probably a good indication that they don't know what they're doing. The problem they're stuck with is they're stuck with the it has its roots in germ theory, of course, but they're stuck with this amyloid cascade hypothesis, where they see that if they can stop these amyloid plaques forming or can remove them, that they say are associated with Alzheimer's. And I've had a very good neurologist here in New Zealand who's done some groundbreaking work on diet and Alzheimer's and diet and Parkinson's. The last time he spoke publicly, and that's Dr. Matt Phillips, he just said there is no correlation between amyloid plaques and Alzheimer's. So for a start, their base theory is wrong. But I think in the last 10 years, it's something like 400 drug trials. And, the handful they've got to registration, and I think you've probably caught on to this scandal around the Aduhelm where they just basically, where the FDA overrode their independent board. These things actually do what they've set out to do, which is to clean up the amyloid plaques or prevent them forming. And there is no change. And in fact, the Salk Institute recently came out with research that says by removing those amyloid plaques, you're actually doing more damage.
Yeah.
So they just don't know. And when I talk to them, they're so far from being near what Alzheimer's even is that they're worse than useless. In fact, they're very, very dangerous. And they seriously want Anne to die because she is proving them wrong. And I make that claim, but I mean, we just recently we keep trying to get her into rehabilitation. She has to climb over their hubris to do that because when I challenge them, and I do challenge them occasionally, all they can say is, oh, well, if we don't know how to do this, no one does because we're the smartest guys on the planet. And you go, well, clearly you're not. So basically, you have to get through your head, these guys are not your friends and they're incompetent. You have to stay away from them. So they are totally incompetent. It's not quite nearly incompetent. They're just totally incompetent. And that's very, very sad. But I mean, that's, they've got to stop trying to find a pill and get on with treating the actual condition.
And this is true not just for Alzheimer, but for high blood pressure, for cardiovascular issues, for cancer, for diabetes. They don't look at the root cause. It's really interesting to me because in my undergrad, for a few months, I worked in a lab, and the PI, the principal investigator back then, thought that the amyloid plaque was actually protective. They were not causative. And back then, of course, nobody believed that. And now there's more and more evidence that actually the amyloid plaque might be a way for the body to neutralize some type of toxins or stressors in the brain. Is that correct?
Yes, and Dr. Bredeson's very, very strong on this. And they're finding, as I say, well, the Salk Institute pointed that way too, is that the plaques are actually, the brain's trying to protect itself, and by removing them, it removes the protections. Yeah. So, definitely is that's the sign. But as I say, I just found it very interesting that Dr. Matt Phillips would get up and just say, as well as all of that, there is no statistical correlation. You have people with serious amounts of amyloid plaque in their brains functioning completely normally. And for him to say there is no correlation, I found very, very interesting. So, but they are a protective mechanism. That's very clear for anyone who's got their eyes open.
And the sad part in all this is the main focus is still on those plaques. They don't seem to expand the research on the cause of Alzheimer. They are stuck in that system.
Yeah, it's I put it down to cognitive dissonance, and I cover this in my book. And the problem they have is that if they start to let that idea come in, they have to accept the fact they don't know what they're doing. And as a professional, I'm a highly trained professional. I'm on top of my game, and you go, well, yeah, but you don't know. So that's the first one. The second one, bit of cognitive dissonance that I think, I think about this, and I studied cognitive dissonance at university. They entered medicine to help people. And so if they agree that they don't know what they're doing, then they've also got to confront the fact they've let down everybody they have ever consulted with. And the third one is these guys are very, very closely, and in our country, and I believe it's the same elsewhere, are very heavily and closely related to the research establishment. And they've been out there spruiking for money. And so they have to then come up and go, well, basically, we've taken these guys for a ride. Yeah. And so it's the whole thing of the classic example of cognitive dissonance is the people that tell you the world's going to end on April the 14th. Yeah. And you'd expect when April the 15th rolled around and they got up and the sun was up and life was going on, that they would go, oh, we got that wrong. Thank goodness. They don't. They double down. And that's what I think's happened with the medical profession. They are comprehensively failing and they're doubling down. Dr. Bredesen makes a point, and I think he's right. Their research is so strong now that people that are ignoring it, which is the whole Alzheimer's medical profession, are actually now entering the field of, the area of criminal negligence. And I believe that what will turn this around will be, I'm not a fan of the legal litigation system, but I think that's probably where it's going to come, where it's going to turn around, where it starts to get dangerous for these guys to continue with their homicidally incompetent habits. They kill everyone they meet. So it's pretty harsh, but that's where it is.
Exactly. I mean, the whole medical system is, to me, is backward. It has to be reset and start
Yes.
over with common sense. I'm going to play the devil's advocate here. I mean, you have the mainstream science against you. So what is the evidence that you have that you can reverse and treat Alzheimer?
Okay, well, and we're going down to, it really goes down to Dr. Bredesen's team. They're the only game in town. And since the year 2000, they've been successfully treating Alzheimer's. So these are Alzheimer's mice. And there are some limitations around that about what sort of Alzheimer's it is. They treated their first human trials. They started them in 2012, I believe. And by 2014, they did their recode, or Dr. Bredesen's recode protocol, carried it out on 9 people. And one of them didn't make it, and she was very, very advanced, apparently. The other 8 are still going. And I think 6 of them were either not working or struggling at work, and they were all, within quite a short time back at work. And Bredesen since then has been releasing studies. Late 2018, they released just sort of just some base facts on 100 clients that they've been working with, his team's been working with around the world. And on their MOCA scores, and they hadn't done this analysis, I dug in, and 63 of those clients had done a MOCA score, in the published results.
Yeah.
3 of them had come from 0 to, I think it was 3, 6, and 9, which is just phenomenal. But I couldn't give a percentage increase. So of the 60 who had, I could apply a percentage increase to their MOCA scores. It was a 31% increase, and I think it was over about 2 years, a bit hard to tell. But over that time, you would have expected at least a 20% decrease in their MOCA score. So, and Bredesen now has just released late, I think it was earlier this year, another 25, and they now have approval to do a large-scale trial.
Okay.
But it can't be a trial. It is just basically because each person's got something wrong with them. They're different. So you just absolutely just got to do it by case study. And so it's coming and more happening all the time. And as you know, with integrated medicine, there's various integrated medicine practitioners in their fields who are just absolutely knocking the ball out of the park compared to their colleagues who are just relying on pharmaceutical medicine.
So what are the 3 steps of the Alzheimer treatment plan? So what can we do to prevent and help with people who have this condition?
Okay, well, with any project, first thing you've got to do is know what is you're up against. So the first thing you have to do is you have to know what Alzheimer's is. And to do that, you need to understand the condition. You need to understand the evidence, and to start to get an inkling of what's going on. So if you don't understand what it is, if you still continue to think it's a disease and there's going to be a pill, then you're never going to get anywhere. You've just got to go past that and understand in depth what it's about. That's step 1. Step 2 is then you need to go and work out how and understand, not work out, but because someone else is going to have to tell you how it's diagnosed and how it's treated. And there's probably 3 steps to that. First one is to understand what a good diagnostic process looks like. And I cover this in, I'm putting together an online Alzheimer's service at the moment, a coaching service for people who've been faced with a diagnosis. And I go at some length through Anne's work, which her diagnostic process generated a 40-page report. And that's what good diagnosis looks like. Up until that stage, when she was told she had, that was all over, from the experts, so-called experts. I mean, if she'd had 10 hours of time out of anyone total, I would have been surprised. It's just hours and hours and dozens of tests, So that's the diagnostic process. The treatment process is as complex because you've now got a whole bunch of things you've got to deal with. And then you need to understand what a good Alzheimer's program looks like. So this is the second step, knowing how it's treated. And you need to know, I mean, as you alluded to before, people go, yeah, well, coconut oil is the answer. No, it's not. It's just part of the answer. So you've got to train yourself past looking for low-hanging fruit and simple solutions. Third step is you've got to start the project. The big thing with the project, and I've done, and Lan and I over the years, we've built a lot of houses and built a couple of boats. We built a boat and sailed overseas. With that, you have to be very clear on what you're aiming to do, and then you assemble a team. And when you build a house, you don't do the architecture, you don't do the engineering, you don't do the electrical planning. That's all done by experts, but you engage them. So stage 3 is you need to start the project. And that's what I work with people. And a lot of people just haven't done these projects. That's the other thing, that people don't understand how project management works. If you've just gone and had a job all your life, you've probably never done a major project. But that's what we did all our lives.
Yeah.
So you go the 3 steps: know Alzheimer's, know how it's treated, and start the project. And it's an ongoing thing too. The project, it's just ongoing, and it's a big deal, but it's doable.
It is doable. And you have tons of information in your book, actually, that you wrote. So how can we get access to this book?
It's on Amazon.
Okay.
And so I've written 2 books. I've written an earlier one, which was more just I was venting at that stage. It was in September 2018. And I've published the second book, and it built on the first book. But my aim with it was to tell our story, because I think it's reasonably inspiring. Well, it is inspiring. I mean, we've beaten the odds by huge odds. But it's set out. I'm an educationist by background. It's set out to help you understand what Alzheimer's is about. But I've also tried to make it not too deep, because I mean, Dr. Bredson writes books, and they're wonderful books, but they just go too deep.
Yeah.
So it's on Amazon. It's called Breakthrough Surviving Alzheimer's and Why You Can Too. And I have a website called beatingalzheimers.org. And that is, at the moment, it's just basically a placeholder. And it's a good spot to start. And we will be introducing the service in the new year, which will allow people to actually work their way through and start an Alzheimer's recovery program.
Awesome. So keep us posted on this. So thank you, Mr. Peter, for your time. That was really interesting, actually. Thank you for giving us some hope that there's something we can do if you're dealing with some, beginning dementia or Alzheimer's disease, or actually, at the end of the day, any neurological conditions. We can be treated with nutrition and different tools.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Serge. And just as a side issue, Anne's doctor in this town has reversed type 2 diabetes with over 100 local people doing exactly what you preach. So, integrative medicine is where it is. Yeah. And it is for Alzheimer's, and seems to be for just about everything, all of these chronic conditions. So thank you very much for having me on, and please keep up the good work.
Thank you for your time, and keep doing your good work on that side of the planet.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of the day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.